What if I told you that arguing isn't about fighting, that the best persuaders in the world don't win by shouting louder, but by listening, reframing, and guiding their opponents gently toward their side? Now, imagine mastering the art of persuasion so deeply that you could influence boardrooms, calm down tense family dinners, or even sell an idea without sounding like a salesperson. That's what this book is all about. Jay Heinrichs didn't write Thank You for Arguing just for debaters or politicians. He wrote it for everyday people like you and me who want to get better at expressing themselves, resolving conflict, and yes, even winning arguments without creating enemies. Drawing from ancient Greek rhetoric, political campaigns, courtroom tactics, and parenting fails, Heinrichs shows us how arguing can be a form of connection, not conflict. At the heart of the book is one big idea. Persuasion isn't about winning a fight, it's about achieving agreement. True rhetoric isn't manipulation, it's alignment. And once you see the power of rhetorical tools, you'll start noticing them everywhere. In ads, in news headlines, in your partner's passive-aggressive comment over dinner. One of the first key ideas Heinrichs introduces is the difference between fighting and arguing. Fighting is about dominance. Someone wins, someone loses. But arguing in the classical rhetorical sense aims at consensus. It's not a zero-sum game. He uses an example from parenting. His own teenage son wanted to borrow the car, but instead of laying down the law, Heinrichs guided the conversation using rhetoric. He let the kid lay out his case, asked leading questions, and subtly shifted the debate towards safety and responsibility. The result? His son walked away thinking it was his own idea to drive less and with more caution. That's the power of persuasion done right. Another foundational concept is the three rhetorical appeals: ethos, pathos, and logos. Ethos is about credibility. Do people trust you? Pathos is emotion. Can you make them feel something? And logos is logic. Does your argument make sense? Most people lean too hard on logic and forget that humans are emotional creatures. Think of Apple commercials. They barely mention specs. Instead, they show people feeling inspired, creative, empowered. That's pathos in action. And it works because it hits us in the gut, not just the brain. A third powerful insight is the importance of timing and context, what the Greeks called kairos. It's not just what you say, but when you say it. Imagine trying to convince your boss to give you a raise while she's running to a meeting and hasn't had coffee. Wrong moment. But if you wait until she's relaxed after a successful presentation, your odds improve dramatically. Persuasion lives and dies by timing, and Kairos reminds us to be sensitive to the emotional and situational atmosphere around our conversations. One of my favorite tools in the book is what Heinrichs calls the concession. Instead of attacking, concede a minor point to gain credibility, and then pivot. It's the classic yes and move from improv comedy. It builds rapport, lowers defenses, and allows you to guide the discussion. For instance, in a political debate, if your opponent makes a valid point, acknowledge it. You're right about that, you say, and then steer the conversation toward your own position. It's disarming. People expect resistance, not agreement. And when you surprise them with humility, they're more likely to listen. Another brilliant tactic is the use of rhetorical questions. These aren't meant to be answered, they're meant to steer thinking. Do you really want to let fear dictate our decisions? That's not asking for information, it's leading the listener to reflect and agree with your framing. Heinrichs points out that questions can bypass resistance. Rather than telling someone they're wrong, you invite them to reconsider their position on their own terms. Humor, too, plays a vital role. Not the kind that punches down, but the kind that creates a bond. When Heinrichs talks about disarming tense situations with a well-timed joke or clever turn of phrase, it's not about being a clown. It's about easing tension and humanizing yourself. Think of President Obama's self-deprecating humor, or how stand-up comedians can speak hard truths under the veil of laughter. When people laugh with you, they drop their guard. The book also explores the idea of decorum, the art of fitting in with your audience. It's not about being fake, it's about meeting people where they are. If you're speaking to scientists, use evidence and clear logic. If you're talking to children, adjust your tone and metaphors. When Heinrichs gives examples of how JFK or Churchill tailored their speeches to different audiences, you realize that persuasion isn't one size fits all. The best persuaders know how to match their delivery to the mood, culture, and expectations of their listeners. He also spends time on the dark side of rhetoric, fallacies, and manipulation. This part is crucial because once you learn rhetorical tools, you also have to use them ethically. Heinrich shows how politicians and advertisers twist facts, mislead with emotion, and use logical fallacies like straw man arguments or false dilemmas. But rather than scare you off, he empowers you to recognize these tactics. The goal isn't just to argue better, it's to spot when you're being persuaded unfairly. Throughout the book, Heinrichs weaves in lessons from Aristotle, Cicero, and even modern politics and advertising. One of the most striking parts is when he breaks down how Hitler used rhetoric to gain power, not to praise it, but to warn us. The lesson? Persuasion is powerful, and like any power, it can be abused. That's why he keeps returning to this. Persuasion should aim for the good of the audience, not tricking people into doing something they'll regret, not manipulating them into silence, but guiding them towards something meaningful, useful, and ideally shared. And then there's the part about distraction. One of the most underused tools in everyday persuasion is redirection. Say someone's getting worked up about a point that doesn't matter. Instead of pushing back, change the subject. Bring up a new frame. Heinrichs compares it to judo. You use the other person's energy to shift momentum. Not every battle is worth winning on its own terms. Sometimes the victory comes from changing the terms of the battle. At its heart, Thank You for Arguing isn't just a manual for debate. It's a handbook for emotional intelligence, timing, and empathy. It invites us to see persuasion not as war, but as dance, not as domination, but as dialogue. When you walk away from the book, you begin to realize that every conversation is a chance to connect, not just convince. So, what are the big takeaways? First, persuasion is a skill, not a personality trait. Anyone can learn it. Second, the most effective arguments are not about shouting your truth, but helping others discover a shared truth. Third, rhetorical tools are everywhere. And when used wisely, they can improve your career, relationships, and even how you talk to yourself. If you've ever left a conversation thinking, "Why didn't I say that?" or "Why didn't they understand me?" this book gives you answers. More than that, it gives you tools. It doesn't promise you'll win every argument, but it shows you how to make your voice heard, how to listen better, and how to shape conversations that build bridges instead of walls. Now here's the part where I step back and say, don't just stop here. If this summary sparked your interest, go read the full book. Jay Heinrichs brings humor, history, and a lifetime of rhetorical insight to every chapter. You'll laugh, you'll nod, and you'll walk away ready to speak with more power, more grace, and a lot more fun. And if you found this video helpful, share it with a friend who talks too much or not enough. Let's all learn how to argue a little better together.